This is the SG, Gibson made for girls. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Gibson had some pretty edgy marketing in the 2000s, but let's see what they designed for women here. It's a beautiful Skyburst SG. So if this is your first time seeing the Goddess series of guitars, you are in for a treat. So the Goddess series was first introduced for the year 2006 and was discontinued in December of 2007. And the whole claim to fame for these things is they were simple, but beautiful at the same time. Now, if you're confused what I mean by simplified, look at this. Master volume, master tone. You don't have 4 full knobs. You don't have a full bridge setup, it's just your regular wrap tail. The tuners on these are actually auto-locking Grovers that go from the top instead of the back like you normally see. And they also featured gloss finishes on the top, but yet the back and sides were done up in a satin. And speaking of the finish, they were absolutely beautiful with a matching Gibson logo, complementary winding colors within the pickups, and obviously just the finish itself. They were offered in 5 great hues: Ebony, Iceburst, Roseburst, Violet Burst, and the one we're talking about today, Skyburst. These were offered on both Les Paul and SG models, and they weren't necessarily too expensive brand new. These were Gibson USA production. I couldn't find an exact figure, but I believe it was around $1,500, and then they eventually got blown out for as low as like $800. However, on the used market, these things have actually gained popularity ever since their discontinuation because of the unique specs. I mean, we didn't even talk about the Ebony fretboard yet, but getting something looking like this out of Gibson was not quite as common back then. We didn't have the mod collection and demo shop constantly producing guitars that looked kinda similar to this. So in many ways, this thing was ahead of its time. But there's one other unique feature about the Goddess series. They have slightly shrunken bodies. Well, at least the Les Paul does. Some sources say the SG does as well. However, here's a side-by-side comparison. I took the measurements. I don't notice anything different for the SG version, but the Les Paul I can definitely verify. Suppose another way we could verify it, we could try to put a regular SG in this case, and it fits just fine. On a Les Paul Goddess, the case is actually smaller. You can still really squeeze a normal Les Paul in there, but it doesn't come in as easy as this in and out. I think the reason why the SG didn't get the body size reduction is because they were just trying to make the guitar thinner for the ladies on the Les Paul side of things, whereas the SG, they don't necessarily have to do that. And you might say, hey Trogly, that marketing is kind of offensive. Women need simplified controls? No, I really think they'd simplified it to make it different and wanted to offer beautiful options that might appeal to a broader range. But don't worry, they might have developed this one mainly for the female audience. However, at the same time, they came out with the Les Paul GT for the guys. Now that one gets fancy push-pull electronics and some other stuff that you can learn about in this episode. But hey, I'm not here to judge. I like the Goddess series more than the GT, so even though they might have been trying to target a certain audience with each, it doesn't matter. You like what you like. No hate here. It wouldn't surprise me if Gibson got canceled or something like this had they did it today, but that's what's great about the 2000s. They were pretty wacky. They had some really edgy ads comparing an SG to devil horns. They also compared a Les Paul to an explosion. But this was an awesome era for unique, relatively affordable models like the Menace Les Paul and SG, the SG3, the Voodoo series, the Gothic series, the introduction of the BFG. This is also when they started to get crazy with the robot guitars. You could also credit something like the Vegas series. If you have not taken the time to learn about the 2000s model of Gibson history, I would highly suggest it. As far as the original case, it's just a regular snakeskin-like exterior. You still got the combo lock. You've got the really nice upgraded handle. It's a nice white interior. And then we've got some case candy here with our silica packet, pre-pack checklist, all filled out, combo lock instruction card, owner's manual with included history lesson, and a truss rod tool. Let's go ahead and document this relatively clean Skyburst example of the SG. Inside the SG Goddess, we have not taken a look at one of these on the channel in a while, so let's start with our pickups. It's kind of like the Voodoo series. You have no adjustable rows of pull pieces. They're all slug coil. Once again, simplifying their design a little bit. However, these might look uncovered, but they're not. It's kind of like what the mod collection uses yet today. The front plate has been cut out and the rest of it is technically covered. It's just the regular 490R and the 498T in the bridge. However, as we talked about earlier, the color of the windings complement the guitar. So for this exact one, it has blue. The white Iceburst also has blue. Then the Roseburst has red. The black one matches the red. The only one that is exclusive is the Violet Burst. That's the only one that got the purple windings. It wasn't all that uncommon for people to buy these relatively cheap and just mod them out the way they want. They didn't care about the fancy pickups. The truss rod cover was the first thing to go on many of these. But on the backside, they don't have any special markings, just Gibson USA with no stickers. But you can tell what they are by the readings in the circuit, so 13.9 in the bridge tells us the 498T, and half as hot 7.89 in the neck for the 490R, and them combined 5.13 with a master volume and master tone. These are kind of like the high performance knobs in the fact that they're UFO shaped. They're not exactly the same. These do not have a set screw. They just pull on and off like a normal knob. Here's what you're rocking underneath it. It's just 2 humbucker routes. It's not a swimming pool route, so you have limited areas of what you could do, but you could almost fit like a kill switch right here if you wanted to, like one of the flippy switches. If you ever take apart an SG and see a gap like this in your tenon, that's just how some of them are. As long as you're solid here, Gibson will say you're fine. Here's a look at the bridge. It's the lightning bar variety to help you get slightly better intonation. You can see the code for this bridge right there. You'll notice this one's a little special. It's still, here in the year 2023, has the plastic film over the pickguard. When's the last time you seen that? However, this is not mint condition. It's been played. You can see where picking scratches have kind of worn through in that area. Not completely through the plastic, and that's just a bubbled area. So I decided to polish it, as silly as that seems. And some of the stickers started to wear away at that time as well. And sadly, we do have a small chip right here through the finish. Somebody likely couldn't find their output jack and dinged it. And besides a couple of marks on the neck, it's not too bad. It presents as a new old stock piece, but if I ever sell this or something, please know it was played. I want to take a second to really get in the face of this Skyburst finish. It's kind of reminiscent of what they did on the robot guitars. I like how you can still technically see the wood grain through it. I think it's just lacquer sink rather than an intended effect. Kind of varies up the blue hue rather than just the burst. Now we can move on from the 2-piece mahogany body to our mahogany neck and ebony fretboard. All the fun models stopped getting ebony around 2011. That's when Richlight came into play. And we've got acrylic inlays on here, even if they do look extra white. However, I noticed a very interesting phenomenon. When I unboxed it, this board was very dry. Unfortunately, we do have a small crack stemming right here, but usually that doesn't mean anything on a fretboard, unless it gets really bad. But I think the drying out of the board might have shrunk it just enough to actually crack our inlays. It just kind of looks like finish checking, but there's no finish over top of that. It's at that for the 3rd and 5th inlay. This one's like particularly bad. Like, it's not brittle, it's not going to fall off, but I'd never seen that before. The other ones don't seem to have as much. I mean, maybe that one has a bit. It's important to note these are not reduced scale length guitars. It's still 24 3/4 inches with a 12-inch fretboard radius. However, that's a very skinny nut, 1.6. Usually, Gibson guitars are around 1.7-ish, give or take a bit. And then by the 12th, we're just at 2. Usually it's like 2.1. So it's about 1/10 of an inch slimmer, which might not sound like a lot, but you will feel that. Then we got a skinny 0.8 first fret neck depth, and wow, 0.89. Now we can move on to our headstock. Truss rod's looking good. There it is, our beautiful blue Gibson logo, one of my favorites of the series. Here you can see our top lock tuners. I don't trust these things. You're just supposed to put it in, and then as you wind it, it automatically locks in place, but it doesn't always do it very reliably. I hate how much these things stick up as compared to other tuners. They are my least favorite Grovers ever created. Most of them that you see, people try to wind them up like normal, like we're seeing here. They still make them. They're called top lock tuners. So wound correctly, they're going to look something like this with a single wrap. Or if you're daring enough, you can pull it completely taut like most locking tuners. But just because you have this slotted area like a PRS style locking tuner, that doesn't mean that that's what you use to lock it. That's just to help line up where the hole will actually let the string go through. So hopefully that helps you if you're trying to tackle those. My best advice, use them like a regular tuner. Don't worry about the locking function. It's not worth the headache because they don't always hold. Moving on to the back, since these start as a satin finish, if they get played at all, you will be able to tell it. That might look like a scratch, but that's a buffed area of the finish. Satin finishes are very unforgiving if you're looking for perfect condition collectibles. Right here you can see where a strap has been rubbing against it. Take a look along the edges, you can see where it's rubbed against somebody there. Here it looks like a stand might have reacted, or maybe a strap. There was some like gunk on that, but I cleaned most of it off. The bottom edge is looking okay, but then you get the matching stand scuff or something over there. The back is a nice dark blue color as compared to the Skyburst top. And here's where if you get it in the light, you can see it's a two-piece body. Here's what our control cavity looks like. They didn't make it smaller, probably because of weight relief, you could technically say. Just got your Gibson branded pots in here. Nothing too crazy. Then our neck is the exact same story. Again, you can tell somebody played this one because this has turned into a gloss finish. There's like a little bit of clear coat wear. We'll have to check that under blacklight to see if that's like actually worn through or if it's just like a reaction to a player's sweat. You don't really notice it until you get it in the light. So this is more so one that was lightly played at home, but somebody was too lazy to take the pickguard film off of rather than an NOS stock example. Because looking on the back side of the headstock, this is what the whole finish should look like. Usually the headstocks don't get touched up too much. So this is what the original satin sheen would have looked like versus what we now have on the neck. From the back, you can't even tell they're Locking Grover tuners, and the serial number of this one dates to the 23rd day of 2007. Quick blacklight test just for fun. This would be a cool finish. Ever since I started doing these blacklight tests on my show, people want a blacklight burst, and this would be it. This weird lime green color. I'm not sure if it would ever actually look good in person, but they could try. Here's how everything's glowing on the front. Our headstock's looking nice and even, and the back is also looking good, and I wanted to check the neck. It's been glossed over as we talked about, but there's that one area over here. I do not see any finish wear. That doesn't necessarily mean that the clear coat wasn't a little bit disturbed. Everything's looking fine. All said and done, this one weighs 6 pounds, 11.4 ounces. Let's go ahead and hear how the Sky sounds. If you're curious if it's neck divey, not this particular example. It's nice and even. So far, I'm really digging this neck pickup. It's so juicy but bright. Which helps the middle be really bright too. The bridge is a little bit darker. That should translate well into distortion, but as always, these tuners are slipping. Now that we know all about the SG Goddess in Skyburst, what are my final thoughts? I'm glad I gave this one a try. Man, this thing is a monster. Like, holy cow. That neck pickup is awesome for cleans. It's great for dirty tones. I'm not much of a soloer, but I could just tell this thing wants to sing. And the bridge pickup sounds phenomenal with the dirt as well. Nice and chuggy. I'm really glad I got this to document again because I just never realized how skinny this nut was. It took seeing the measurement on the workbench for me to actually realize just how smaller this neck is. So if you have small hands, whether you're male or female, that doesn't matter. This might be good. This is smaller than some of those really skinny nut width melody makers. But yeah, at the same time, it's a nice rounded profile once you get up here. So it's not like the flat 61 SG reissue style neck by any means. It still has a nice roundedness to it. I just love the whole blue theme that this one's got going on it. Would it have been better had they bursted the back and the neck and headstock? Sure. But at least we got the cool blue logo. And gotta remember, this was Gibson USA at the time. This is not some crazy custom shop limited edition thing. These were highly underrated. So even though this one might not be perfect, it looks the part of new old stock. I'm definitely gonna hold this one back in my collection, I think. I'd really like a complete set of relatively clean Goddess, SG, and Les Pauls, but as one additional bonus fact, there's also another Les Paul version called the Vixen that was part of this series, but you can check that episode out here. Alright, Troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.